one split second. One miscalculation. That's all it took to turn a winter paradise into the most devastating tragedies ever recorded. These aren't just accidents on the slopes. They're reminders that in winter sports, the smallest mistake can become the ultimate price. It was February 14, 2017, when Lawrence Mitchell's Valentine's Day backcountry expedition in Whistler's remote wilderness would become his final adventure. The 34-year-old ski instructor from Denver had built his reputation at Vail Resort through meticulous attention to safety protocols and an almost obsessive habit of triple-checking every piece of equipment before venturing into dangerous terrain. Mitchell's cautious personality seemed at odds with his chosen profession, but this methodical approach had made him invaluable during his summer work as a mountain rescue volunteer. Over 8 years, he had participated in 15 rescue operations, earning respect from colleagues who knew they could trust his judgment in life-or-death situations. His analytical mind constantly assessed risks, documenting weather patterns and snow conditions with scientific precision. On this particular morning, Mitchell had noted concerning details in his safety log. Recent heavy snowfall combined with warming temperatures had created unstable conditions throughout the Whistler backcountry. Despite these red flags, his extensive experience suggested the risks were manageable with proper precautions and conservative route selection for what he privately considered his most important expedition ever. Mitchell never traveled alone, adhering to his own strict safety rules. His longtime skiing partner accompanied him on what was planned as a celebration of their friendship before Mitchell proposed to his girlfriend the following weekend. The engagement ring waited safely at home, as Mitchell refused to risk losing it in the backcountry. At 11:47 a.m., the pair were carefully traversing a 30-degree slope when disaster struck without warning. Mitchell's skis triggered a massive slab avalanche that fractured 150 meters wide across the mountainside. The initial crack appeared just 10 feet above him, releasing a 3-foot-deep layer of consolidated snow that had been waiting for the slightest disturbance. Mitchell immediately attempted the textbook response, skiing perpendicular to the slide path to escape the debris flow. But avalanches move with terrifying speed, and within seconds the churning mass of snow caught him, accelerating to 40 miles per hour as it swept down the mountain. The avalanche carried Mitchell 400 vertical feet through a gauntlet of broken branches and rocky outcroppings. His body tumbled violently in the debris flow, while his avalanche beacon continued transmitting its life-saving signal. When the slide finally stopped, Mitchell lay buried under 4 feet of concrete hard snow, his ribs fractured and internal bleeding compromising his to breathe in the confined space. His partner immediately activated emergency protocols, using his avalanche transceiver and probe to begin the desperate search. 18 agonizing minutes passed before he located Mitchell's position beneath the compacted debris and began probing to confirm the exact location. Weather conditions delayed helicopter rescue teams for 2.5 hours, forcing the partner to begin the exhausting work of digging alone with his avalanche shovel. When rescuers finally arrived, they needed an additional 90 minutes to carefully extract Mitchell from his snow tomb. They found him unconscious with his airways partially blocked, but it was too late. After 35 minutes buried in the avalanche debris, Mitchell had succumbed to asphyxiation and internal injuries. Investigation later classified the slide as a size 2.5 avalanche, caused by a wind-loaded weak layer that had formed during storms the previous week. Mitchell's girlfriend received news of his death and later established a memorial fund dedicated to avalanche safety education in his honor. Mitchell's death served as a stark reminder that even the most experienced and safety-conscious individuals remain vulnerable to the unpredictable forces of nature in the backcountry. It was January 8, 2018, when Camille Jennings' expertise in ice climbing would be tested by the unforgiving frozen walls of Ouray Ice Park in Colorado. The 28-year-old professional mountain guide from Chamonix, France, had built her reputation through an analytical approach to technical climbing and an almost perfectionist attention to equipment maintenance and route planning. Jennings possessed a fierce determination that had carried her through years of competitive rock climbing before she transitioned to guiding. Her analytical personality drove her to spend hours studying ice conditions and weather patterns, making her one of the most sought-after instructors at Alpine Adventures International. She specialized in technical ice climbing instruction for advanced clients who trusted her methodical approach to safety. On this frigid morning, temperatures had dropped to -8 degrees Fahrenheit following several days of freeze-thaw cycles. Jennings documented the potentially brittle ice conditions in her route notes, but considered them within acceptable parameters for the rigid designator, a grade WI4+ route she had successfully completed over 20 times during her 3 seasons in Colorado. 2 experienced clients accompanied Jennings on the multi-pitch climb, both seasoned mountaineers who had specifically requested her guidance on this challenging route. Her reputation for thorough preparation and conservative decision-making had made her popular among serious climbers seeking to push their limits safely. At 2:23 p.m. on the second pitch, Jennings was leading the climb when disaster struck without warning. Her ice screw anchor pulled out of aerated ice just 15 feet above her last protection point. The anchor failure occurred in a section of poorly bonded ice that appeared solid from the surface, but lacked structural integrity beneath. She fell 20 feet before her rope caught on her last piece of protection, but the tremendous impact force caused that ice screw to also fail under the dynamic loading. The cascading failure of her protection system sent Jennings into an uncontrolled fall down the frozen wall. Jennings continued falling an additional 35 feet, striking multiple ice formations and rocky outcroppings during her descent before impacting the base of the climb. Her body hit the frozen ground with devastating force, suffering severe spinal fractures that caused immediate paralysis. The impact also caused massive internal bleeding and traumatic brain injury from striking ice ledges during the fall. Her clients immediately called for emergency rescue while rappelling down to reach Jennings' position at the base of the climb. They found her unconscious on the frozen ground, her climbing helmet severely damaged from multiple impacts with the ice formations during her fall. Ouray Mountain Rescue Team arrived within 45 minutes, their response time hampered by the technical nature of accessing the accident site. However, they confirmed that Jennings had died from her injuries within minutes of the impact. Investigation revealed that recent temperature fluctuations had created poor ice quality throughout the park. The freeze-thaw cycles had formed layers of aerated ice that appeared solid but lacked the structural integrity needed to support climbing anchors under dynamic loading. The climbing community responded to Jennings's death by establishing improved ice condition assessment protocols and implementing mandatory redundant anchor systems for guide services. Her climbing partner completed their planned expedition to the Canadian Rockies the following season, carrying Jennings's ice tools to honor her memory and dedication to the sport she loved. It was December 3rd, 2016, when Victor Harrington's decades of ski jumping expertise would be tested on the 65-meter hill at Utah Olympic Park in Park City. The 31-year-old former Olympic ski jumper from Norway had transitioned from competition to coaching, dedicating his post-athletic career to developing the next generation of American ski jumpers. Harrington possessed a perfectionist personality that had served him well during his competitive years, representing Norway in 2 Winter Olympics before a knee injury ended his jumping career. As assistant coach for the U.S. national ski jumping team, he channeled that same obsessive attention to detail into developing young athletes, often personally testing jump conditions before allowing his students to train. His methodical approach had already produced several national team athletes who credited Harrington's technical expertise for their success, a hands-on coaching philosophy that made him popular among junior team members. On this crisp December afternoon, temperatures held steady at 18 degrees Fahrenheit with calm wind conditions. Harrington was conducting a routine training session for junior team members, planning to demonstrate proper landing technique on the 65-meter hill. These were standard conditions he had successfully navigated hundreds of times during his competitive career and coaching tenure. The junior athletes gathered at the bottom of the landing hill to observe Harrington's demonstration. He had specifically chosen to show them a technique modification for maintaining balance during longer jumps, something several team members had been struggling with during recent training sessions. At 3:15 p.m., Harrington began his approach run down the in-run track, building speed as he approached the takeoff point. However, he misjudged his takeoff timing by a critical margin, launching slightly early and at a suboptimal angle that would prove catastrophic. The timing error caused Harrington to achieve excessive distance, overshooting his calculated landing zone by 8 meters. His years of experience told him immediately that something was wrong as he soared through the air at speeds approaching 40 miles per hour. He attempted to adjust his landing position mid-flight, trying to compensate for the trajectory error, but physics had already sealed his fate. Harrington crashed into the transition area beyond the designated landing hill, where the slope flattened significantly and was not designed to absorb high-speed impacts. The impact occurred at approximately 35 miles per hour, with Harrington's skis catching in the packed snow. The extreme forces overwhelmed his ski bindings, which released partially but not quickly enough to prevent severe compound fractures to both legs as his body continued forward in a violent tumbling motion. The forward momentum drove Harrington headfirst into the packed snow surface, causing catastrophic spinal cord injury at the C3 to C4 vertebrae level. The impact severed his spinal cord completely, causing immediate paralysis and respiratory failure. Training was immediately suspended as coaches and medical personnel rushed to Harrington's position. The junior athletes watched in horror as their mentor lay motionless in the snow, his body positioned at an unnatural angle that made the severity of his injuries immediately apparent. Emergency medical teams arrived within 12 minutes, but the damage was irreversible. Harrington had died from his spinal injuries within minutes of impact, his respiratory system failing due to the high-level spinal cord damage. Investigation revealed that Harrington had miscalculated the timing adjustment needed for the technique demonstration. USA Nordic implemented enhanced coaching safety protocols following the tragedy. It was March 22, 2019, when Noelle Chambers' passion for powder snowboarding would lead her into one of the mountain's most deadly hidden traps at Jackson Hole Mountain Resort in Wyoming. The 26-year-old professional snowboard instructor from Vancouver, Canada, had built her reputation through patient teaching methods and an unwavering commitment to safety education that made her one of the resort's most respected senior instructors. Chambers possessed a calm, nurturing personality that made her incredibly popular with students. Her 3 seasons at Jackson Hole had established her as a specialist in advanced terrain instruction and powder riding techniques. Despite her gentle demeanor, she maintained a healthy respect for mountain hazards and consistently emphasized safety protocols. On this particular day, fresh powder conditions beckoned after 18 inches of new snow had fallen overnight. The weather was perfect with excellent visibility and stable conditions. Chambers was taking her lunch break at 12:30 p.m., exploring the fresh powder in the trees off Thunder Bowl, an area she knew intimately. Her decision to ride solo during lunch violated resort policy, but like many experienced instructors, she occasionally bent the rules when conditions were perfect and her terrain knowledge was extensive. The tree runs offered challenging terrain and pristine powder that Chambers craved. At 1:15 p.m., Chambers was carving through widely spaced Douglas fir trees when disaster struck. Her snowboard caught an edge on a hidden fallen log buried beneath the fresh powder, sending her tumbling sideways in an uncontrolled fall. The fall launched Chambers directly into a deep tree well that had formed around a massive Douglas fir. These natural snow formations occur when heavy snowfall accumulates around large trees, creating deep cavities of loose, unconsolidated snow that can trap fallen riders. The tree well measured approximately 8 feet deep, filled with loose powder that offered no structural support. Chambers landed headfirst and in the inverted position with her snowboard still attached, trapping her legs above her head in a configuration that made self-rescue impossible. The loose snow immediately began collapsing around her body, filling her jacket and covering her face as she struggled desperately to right herself. The unconsolidated powder acted like quicksand, making every movement more difficult and causing additional snow to cascade around her trapped form. Her inverted position created deadly factors. The loose snow blocked her airways, while the upside-down orientation restricted blood flow to her brain and made breathing increasingly labored. Despite her experience and fitness level, escape was impossible without outside assistance. Chambers fought against the suffocating snow for approximately 15 minutes, her strength gradually failing as oxygen deprivation and the inverted position took their toll. The tree well became her tomb as she succumbed to asphyxiation, claiming another victim to this well-known mountain hazard. She was reported missing when she failed to return for her 2 p.m. lesson, prompting immediate concern from the snowboard school supervisor. Jackson Hole Ski Patrol launched an immediate search operation, focusing on her known favorite riding areas. Patrol members located her body 45 minutes later using systematic probe lines, where her snowboard was partially visible above the snow surface. The discovery confirmed every mountain professional's worst nightmare about tree well accidents. Investigation confirmed death by asphyxiation in the tree well. Jackson Hole immediately implemented enhanced tree well awareness programs and established mandatory buddy system policies for all off-piste riding by staff members. Chambers' family established a tree well safety education fund, providing awareness materials to ski resorts across North America, ensuring her dedication to safety education continues to save lives. It was January 15, 2015, when Franklin Rhodes's extensive wilderness expertise would be tested by the brutal cold of Minnesota's Boundary Waters canoe area. The 42-year-old naturalist from Duluth had built his reputation through methodical scientific research and an obsessive respect for nature's power that made him one of the Minnesota Department of Natural Resources' most trusted wilderness educators. Rhodes possessed a methodical, scientific personality that drove him to document every detail of his expeditions. His comprehensive knowledge of winter survival techniques had made him invaluable for training wilderness guides in cold weather safety protocols. Colleagues respected his cautious approach and meticulous preparation that had kept him safe through dozens of winter expeditions. On this frigid January morning, weather forecasts predicted temperatures dropping to -20 degrees Fahrenheit with possible snow squalls. Rhodes was embarking on an approved 3-day research expedition to document winter wildlife patterns. Skiing established routes through designated wilderness areas. His scientific approach meant carrying comprehensive emergency equipment and filing detailed trip plans with park rangers. The expedition represented routine work for Rhodes, who had successfully managed similar conditions in previous winters. On day 2 at 1:30 p.m., Rhodes was crossing a beaver pond when disaster struck. His skis broke through thin ice that had appeared solid, plunging his legs and lower torso into 33-degree water that immediately began soaking through his clothing layers. Rhodes immediately began emergency warming procedures, drawing on years of cold weather training. However, when he opened his waterproof pack to retrieve spare clothing, he discovered a small tear in the pack's liner had allowed moisture to penetrate, causing his backup socks and base layers to freeze solid overnight. Despite the setback, Rhodes successfully built an emergency fire using his prepared tinder and kindling. The flames provided crucial warmth, but strong winds and limited natural windbreaks made maintaining the fire increasingly difficult. As early hypothermia began affecting his judgment after 45 minutes of struggling with wet clothing and inadequate fire maintenance, Rhodes made a critical decision error. Instead of staying with his fire, he decided to ski toward his planned campsite 1 mile away, believing he could reach better shelter. The 30-minute ski attempt proved catastrophic. His core body temperature dropped steadily as wet clothing continued drawing heat from his body. Hypothermia-induced confusion led to poor navigation decisions and wasted energy as he struggled through difficult terrain. Rhodes's decision-making became severely impaired as his core temperature fell below 90 degrees. Exhaustion and disorientation caused him to collapse 500 yards from his intended shelter, where he attempted to construct an emergency bivouac using survival techniques. Before losing consciousness, Rhodes managed to activate his personal locator beacon, transmitting his GPS coordinates to rescue services. The device represented his final act of clear thinking, as hypothermia claimed his cognitive abilities. Search and rescue teams received the beacon signal and located Rhodes 6 hours later. They found him in a partially constructed emergency shelter, but medical examination confirmed he had died from severe hypothermia, with his core body temperature having dropped below 80 degrees. Investigation revealed that equipment failure and decision-making under stress had contributed to the tragedy. The Minnesota Department of Natural Resources implemented enhanced cold weather training requirements, emphasizing decision-making under stress. Rhodes's colleagues established a wilderness safety training program in his memory. Ensuring his dedication to proper preparation continues to educate future wilderness professionals. It was November 12, 2018, when Elena Whitmore's dedication to sliding sport safety would be tested by a catastrophic equipment failure at Whistler Sliding Center in British Columbia, Canada. The 29-year-old former Olympic luger from Calgary, Alberta, had transitioned from competition to safety coordination, dedicating her post-athletic career to ensuring track conditions met the highest international standards for athlete protection. Whitmore possessed a detail-oriented personality with an unwavering commitment to athlete safety that had made her invaluable to the International Luge Federation. Her technical expertise came from years of competitive experience, having represented Canada in luge competitions before recurring back injuries ended her athletic career at age 28. As a certified track operations specialist, Whitmore was known for conducting additional safety inspections beyond required protocols. Her colleagues respected her meticulous approach to documentation and her willingness to spend extra hours ensuring every detail met international competition standards. On this crisp November afternoon, Whitmore was supervising pre-season track preparation at the Whistler Sliding Center. The facility was undergoing standard ice application and barrier inspection procedures before opening for training runs. Track conditions were being optimized with proper ice thickness and banking angles. At 4:20 p.m., Whitmore was conducting a final walking inspection of Turn 13 during the designated maintenance period when disaster struck. A maintenance cart being used to transport ice resurfacing equipment experienced a catastrophic brake system failure on the steep track gradient above her position. The 800-pound maintenance cart, loaded with ice-making equipment, began rolling uncontrolled down the track toward Whitmore's location. The cart accelerated rapidly on the steep banking, reaching approximately 15 miles per hour as it approached the turn where she was documenting barrier conditions. The runaway cart struck Whitmore from behind as she knelt beside the track barrier, taking measurements. The impact launched her against the concrete barrier wall with tremendous force, causing immediate severe head trauma and spinal injuries at the cervical level that compressed her spinal cord. She was then crushed between the heavy maintenance cart and the concrete barrier, suffering additional traumatic injuries to her torso and internal organs. The weight and momentum of the equipment caused massive internal bleeding and organ damage that would prove immediately fatal. Whitmore lost consciousness instantly from the severe head trauma and spinal cord compression, her body trapped beneath the overturned maintenance cart. The impact had been so violent that track personnel working nearby immediately recognized the severity of the situation. Track operations personnel immediately activated emergency protocols and called for medical assistance while working to free Whitmore from beneath the heavy equipment. Emergency medical teams arrived within 8 minutes of the accident, but the damage was irreversible. Whitmore had died from her injuries within minutes of the impact. Investigation revealed that a hydraulic brake line had ruptured on the maintenance cart, causing complete brake system failure on the steep track gradient. The mechanical failure was caused by metal fatigue in aging hydraulic components. The International Luge Federation responded by implementing comprehensive new safety protocols requiring multiple brake systems on all track maintenance equipment and mandatory safety zones during maintenance operations. Whitmore's colleagues established the Elena Whitmore Safety Initiative, providing funding for advanced safety equipment at sliding sport venues worldwide. If these devastating winter sports tragedies left you shaken, click the next video now to see more final moments that will leave you speechless.